Thundercats blessed the TV screens with its presence in 1985 and ran for 4 seasons as a beloved kids-friendly animated series for all viewers all over the world. It spawned an entire franchise consisting of several shows and comic series, including sequels, reboots, and spin-offs. One of the most memorable, popular, and iconic characters from the show is Lion-O, who also happens to be the protagonist of the show as well as the leader of the Thundercats in the franchise. A child stuck in the body of an adult due to circumstances he couldn't control, Lion-O, despite all the adversities thrown his way, strives to be the best version of himself no matter what. We all admire his courage, resilience, and grit. And in this video, we're going to talk about every origin of Lion-O across Thundercats history. All right, folks, without wasting any more time, let's jump right in. Thundercats! How did Lion-O get his first origin story? Well, it was the original animated TV show that started it all in 1985. In the show, Lion-O belongs to the planet of Thundera. Son of King Cloudus, he is the Lord of the Thundercats by lineage. One day, the planet of Thundera, on which he lives, explodes and gets destroyed. This compels Lion-O and the other Thundercats to escape from the planet. They get inside a ship in order to fly off to another planet. However, as if the event of their planet's destruction is not unfortunate enough, mutants of Plundar attack their ship, severely damaging it in the process. That compels the Thundercats to change their destination. Lion-O and some of the other Thundercats go to sleep in capsules, and Jaga attempts to fly the ship towards the Third Earth. He's successful in achieving that, but also ends up dying in the process, sacrificing himself for the greater good. After the arrival of the ship on Third Earth, Lion-O wakes up from his sleep and realizes something. Although his sleep capsule slowed his aging, it wasn't able to stop it completely. As a result of that, he's basically a child in the body of a grown-up. As the show portrays Lion-O as a cunning and skillful leader who must overcome his weaknesses and learn what it takes to become a leader worthy of being called one and gain true maturity in the process. Thundercats lose everything: their home, their planet, their way of life. But due to their resilience, they're still fiercely determined to build themselves back up from scratch. The mutants of Plundar also reach Third Earth. There they meet Mumm-Ra, who offers to form an alliance with them in order to obtain the Eye of Thundera, the main source of power of the Thundercats, essentially acting as a life force for them. At first, the mutants reject Mumm-Ra's offer. In response, Mumm-Ra attacks their ship, sinking it in the process. The mutants, weaponless and having no other choice, choose to join hands with Mumm-Ra. And for the rest of the series, we have the protagonists, the Thundercats, led by Lion-O, on one side, fighting against the antagonists, Mumm-Ra and the mutants of Plundar, on the other side. This battle of good versus evil defines and shapes the rest of the series. Mumm-Ra is the main antagonist of the entire series. He's someone who's extremely cunning and manipulative, who doesn't shy away from trickery. His expertise in magic is a worthy threat to the Thundercats. Mumm-Ra wants to use mutants as his pawns in his ultimate mission to defeat the Thundercats. At first, both Mumm-Ra and the mutants want to obtain the Eye of Thundera. But later on, there's a shift in their goals, and they want to destroy the Thundercats altogether, once and for all. In the meantime, Lion-O wants his mind to match up with his body. In many action-oriented shows and movies, there's a heavy emphasis on spectacle that doesn't have a lot going on in terms of character development. But the best ones tend to develop character and portray spectacle simultaneously. The incompatibility between Lion-O's mind and body gives him an interesting character with complications and multiple dimensions. So, along with facing and overcoming external obstacles, he has to face and overcome internal obstacles as well. How did Marvel Comics first adapt Lion-O's origin in print? Thundercats was first released as an animated series in January of 1985. 11 months later, in the month of December, Marvel also released a comic series based on the animated series. Marvel released Thundercats as a comic series under the imprint of Star Comics. Star Comics was created in 1984 as an imprint of Marvel Comics, intended for children and adolescents. Several animated shows from the 1980s, Transformers, He-Man, The Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, were expanded into franchises because of their widespread popularity. One of the ways in which the franchise could expand itself was through the creation of a comic series that was based on the animated show. The Thundercats comic series was written by David Michelinie, and the artwork for the comics was created by Jim Mooney and Brett Breeding. As we all know, animated TV shows and comic books are two distinct art forms. Their ways in which they tell stories are different from each other. So, even though Marvel wanted to be as faithful to the TV show as possible, and they were, in fact, faithful, by the way, they still made changes to their comic series. The first issue of the Thundercats comics, Survival Run, is a pretty much straight up adaptation of the first two pilot episodes of the animated series, Exodus and the Unholy Alliance. And the biggest important plot point is covered in the first issue, Jaga making Lion-O as Lord of the Thundercats. The comics also show how Lion-O acquires the Sword of Omens. We see how Lion-O's sleep capsule gets damaged, and how the sleep capsule is only able to slow his aging without being able to completely stop it. We also see Jaga's death while attempting to steer the ship of the Thundercats towards Third Earth. One of the most important turning points of the animated series is also portrayed in the comics. The scene in which Lion-O realizes that he's basically a child stuck in the body of a grown-up. And for the rest of the issues, he has to learn what it takes to develop and grow as the leader of the Thundercats. Both the main antagonists, Mum-Ra and the mutants of Plundar, are introduced in the first issue of the comics as well. We also see them joining forces with each other in order to obtain the Eye of Thundera, despite initial reluctance and resilience to the idea by the mutants. Just like the animated series, the comics also focus on battles between good and evil. Here too, Lion-O's internally struggling with the mismatch between his mind and his body. He wants his mind to catch up with his body. And that inner struggle is a core aspect of what makes both the TV animated series and the comics stand out among a lot of kid-friendly animated shows from the 1980s. However, the comics did include certain differences from the original animated series. For the first issue, the comics took inspiration from the cut of the pilot episode that didn't air on TV. There were certain scenes that were not included in the final cut of the pilot episodes when they first aired on television. For example, the scene in which the mutants discovered that the reptilians, jackalmen, and monkeys are working together was shortened for broadcast television. The comics included scenes like this that were removed from the initial pilot episodes. The comic series ran for 24 issues. Several issues within the comic series were adaptations of episodes from the TV series. On the other hand, many of the issues were original stories that didn't disrupt the continuity of the story that the comics took from the television series. In 1987, Marvel UK released a parallel Thundercats comic series that ran for 129 issues, over a period of 3 years for British readers. The Marvel UK Thundercats comic series had several inconsistencies with the original animated series, and due to that, it's not considered canon in the Thundercats franchise. The Marvel UK's version expanded certain storylines and built rich and complicated worlds set in the universe of Thundercats. What did Wildstorm Comics do with Lion-O after the cartoon ended? Wildstorm Comics, first formed as an independent company that went on to become an imprint of DC Comics, also released a Thundercats comic series in 2002. It was titled Thundercats Reclaiming Thundera, and it ran for 5 issues. Thundercats Reclaiming Thundera didn't tell the origin story of Lion-O. It wasn't an attempt at a reboot either. It didn't portray how Lion-O's sleep capsule was damaged. It didn't portray how the planet of Thundera got completely destroyed, or how the burden of responsibility shifts towards Lion-O as he becomes the leader of the Thundercats. Instead, it simply picked up from where the previous story ended. Before the first issue, the series opened with Thundercats number 0, A Cat's Tale. It was written by J. Scott Campbell and Ford Laddell Gilmore. Campbell also created the art for this issue. The rest of the issues were written by Ford Laddell Gilmore, with art created by Ed McGuinness. A Cat's Tale is a reintroduction issue in which Wily Cat is recounting the past battles of Thundercats with Mum-Ra. The first issue, Thundercats Reclaiming Thundera number 1, starts with Lion-O recounting by video screen to Tigra and Pumaira on Third Earth about his battle with Pyron and Mum-Ra inside the Book of Omens. Lion-O tells them about how his victory helped to restore New Thundera to its original grandeur, as reviving the glory the planet Thundera once had was always a priority. He even told them that it's called Thundera, not New Thundera, solidifying the claim that Thundera was never a new civilization. Lion-O tells Tigra to inform the other Thunderians across the galaxy that their homeland is ready to be repopulated again. In the meantime, in Mum-Ra's Onyx Pyramid on New Thundera, the ancient spirits of evil are condemning Mum-Ra's latest defeat by the Thunderians. In order to continue pursuing their ultimate objective of defeating the Thundercats, they bring Shadow Master. They tell him that they're going to create an eclipse on Thundera by bringing darkness to the planet of Thundera. The ancient spirits of evil do that in order to give Shadow Master the ultimate power to destroy Thundercats once and for all. Shadow Master is extremely happy for getting the opportunity to fight and defeat Thundercats, as there are some scores that he has to settle with them. The ancient spirits of evil tell him that if he succeeds in defeating the Thundercats, then they would free him from the Shadow Realm. But if he doesn't succeed, they would make sure that he remains in the Shadow Realm forever. Shadow Master, in response, tells them that on Thundera, in the darkness of the shadows, he's pretty much undefeatable. Shadow Master gets defeated by the Thundercats, and he also gets banished from Thundera forever. Now the ancient spirits of evil, left with no other choice, resurrect and bring back Mum-Ra. In the final issue, it's revealed that Mum-Ra was planning all along to make sure that Lion-O ends up winning all the battles against Mum-Ra. He wanted the Thundercats to lose sight of the bigger picture. And not just that, he wanted them to build a civilization worthy of conquest. As it turned out, everything went according to his plans. He lost battles because he wanted to win the war. He even tricks Lion-O by trapping him inside the Book of Omens through a temporal spell. By doing that, he sends Lion-O into 5 years of isolation. This dark ending shifted the tone of the Thundercats franchise and made it more suitable for adult audiences as well. It shows how cunning and manipulative Mum-Ra can be. In 2003, Wildstorm Comics released another Thundercats comic series titled ThunderCats The Return. ThunderCats The Return picks up from where Thundercats Reclaiming Thundera ended. It opens with Lion-O coming back from 5 years of isolation and discovering that Thundera has been occupied by Mum-Ra. All his teammates have been enslaved, and the world, civilization, culture, and way of life he rebuilt, the planet of Thundera, is under the control of his enemies. For a franchise that started as a kids-friendly animated show about battles of good versus evil, you can see a significant shift in the overall tone in the comics published by Wildstorm. Wildstorm Comics didn't reboot the Thundercats. They simply continued the story from the original series and made Lion-O reach a very dark point in his life. A moment in which he got tricked and lost the planet he cared about so dearly.
Cats who brought law and order to a world of warring animals!
How did the 2011 reboot completely reinvent Lion-O's origin? The 2011 reboot of Thundercats by Warner Brothers made a lot of changes to the character as well as the origin story of Lion-O. It didn't show Lion-O escaping with the other Thundercats in sleep capsules to another planet. It didn't show Lion-O as a child who stuck in the body of an adult. It built a very different version of Lion-O. In this version, there was no mismatch between Lion-O's mind and body. Here, Lion-O's mother, Queen Leona, died during childbirth, so he never really got to know his mother. He grew up with only his father, King Claudius, and his adopted older brother, Tigra. In the pilot episode of the 2011 reboot, we see that King Claudius has a more favorable opinion of Tigra over Lion-O. In the eyes of King Claudius, Tigra is more competent and consistently outperforms Lion-O. In fact, it obviously seems like King Claudius wants Tigra to succeed him as the leader of the Thundercats. As you can see in the series, Tigra's not very humble about it either. In the pilot episode, he's constantly belittling or teasing Lion-O for not being worthy enough of succeeding his father as the new leader of the Thundercats. This hurts and frustrates Lion-O a lot. In this series, Lion-O's not respected and taken seriously by a lot of characters. The reboot builds characters who are not inherently supportive of Lion-O. In fact, he has to earn their respect and support. However, Lion-O does have one thing going for him. The Sword of Omens chose him during the ceremony of the Rite of Passage, making him the legitimate heir to the throne, regardless of King Claudius' preference. In the first 2 pilot episodes, we see Lion-O being treated as an outcast because he believes in technology and Mum-Ra, 2 things considered as myths by people around him. At the end of the first episode, Lion-O tells his father to release the captured lizards, and in the second episode, the lizards attack Thundera by using technology that was dismissed as a myth. And King Claudius is murdered by Panthro, the general of the Kingdom of Thundera and King Claudius' best friend, who reveals himself to be Mum-Ra. Both of his beliefs, due to which he was treated as an outcast by his own family members, turn out to be true. In the first episode, the captured lizards tell Lion-O that the only reason they're in chains is because they're weaker than cats, and that's the law for everyone else in the animal kingdom. That dialogue with captured lizards has an effect on Lion-O, and at the end of the first episode, he tells his father that he wants the captured lizards to be released. His father expresses reluctance at first, but eventually accepts his son's demands and orders the captured lizards to be released. Little does he know that at the time, how his decision might play a role in a larger chain of one unfortunate event after another. The events that we see in the next episode. Unlike the original animated series, Lion-O doesn't travel to another planet in a spaceship in the reboot. Instead, he goes on foot into the wilderness within the same planet. The 7th episode, Legacy, compels Lion-O to go to the Book of Omens. There, he meets Jaga, who tells him that the rules of life, death, and reality are quite different from the real world within the Book of of Omens. Lion-O asks Jaga whether the Book of Omens would tell him how he would be able to defeat Mum-Ra. Jaga responds by saying that Lion-O has to live the events within the Book of Omens in order to find out whether he'd be able to achieve his objective or not. Jaga makes Lion-O travel to a distant past in order to relive as one of his ancestors, Leo, the first lord of the Thundercats who defeated Mum-Ra. Here, the theme of the past catching up with the present is explored as Lion-O figures out why things happened in his life the way they did. This episode further develops and shapes Lion-O's character, along with giving him a deeper origin story. It also compels Lion-O to realize that in order to defeat an ancient force as evil as Mum-Ra, he has to go back, understand the past of his family, and live as his ancestor. The 2011 reboot is way darker than your beloved kids-friendly animated show from the 1980s, and even the characters in the reboot have been designed to suit the overall mature, cynical, and dark tone of the series. There's a heavy emphasis on flaws of the characters as the reboot version prioritizes characters with gray shades instead of portraying neat heroes and villains.
This all day, Snarf. What gives?
What did Thundercats Roar do with Lion-O's origin in 2020? Thundercats Roar was released in 2020 as a parody of the original series. It was created by Victor Courtwright and Marley Halpern Grazer for Cartoon Network. The episodes are shorter and way more fast-paced. It gives Lion-O a very similar origin story to the original Thundercats animated series from 1985. We see the planet of Thundera being destroyed. We see Thundercats traveling to Third Earth. We see the mutants of Plundar chasing them, and we also see Mum-Ra waiting for them on Third Earth. A lot of things happen from the original animated series that are not emphasized here. Sleep capsules and Jaga's sacrifice, for example. Also, even the destruction of the planet of Thundera is portrayed very comically. At the beginning of this absolutely hilarious and entertaining parody, we see a shot of the entire planet of Thundera with a voiceover telling us the marvel of the beauty of the planet. Then within seconds, the entire planet suddenly explodes, and the voiceover tells us that, no, nothing lasts forever. The plot and character development are not the essential priorities here. Almost every scene is a setup for a bunch of jokes. Unlike the original animated series from the 1980s, Thundercats in this parody series get to Third Earth way too quickly, as the sufferings that they endured while escaping from the destruction on their home planet are not dealt with. In the original series, Lion-O constantly struggled with the painful awareness of the fact that he was a child stuck in the body of a grown-up, and for the rest of the series, he had to learn what it means to attain growth, wisdom, and maturity as both a human being and the leader of the Thundercats. He had to make choices and fight hard to win against Mum-Ra and the mutants, with true grit and determination. In the 2020 parody, all that dramatic tension is done away with. Instead, the mismatch between Lion-O's mind and his body is portrayed purely for comical purposes. And during the fight sequences, we see Lion-O accidentally stumbling into victory instead of fighting courageously against Mum-Ra and mutants, and then defeating them, unlike the original series. Also, Mum-Ra is not shown as someone who's extremely terrifying, manipulative, or cunning. He's portrayed as an extremely goofy caricature of his original series counterpart. In the first episode, we see a bunch of robotic teddy bears who get electrocuted every time they say Mum-Ra's name, and they still keep saying. In the second episode, when Mum-Ra is talking to Lion-O about his evil plans, his big stick starts releasing electricity. Mum-Ra tells Lion-O that someone is taking his name in vain, also joking that maybe they have a thing for lightning. And during the fight between Mum-Ra and the Thundercats, those robotic teddy bears begin to stick to the body of Mum-Ra and they keep saying his name, electrocuting themselves as well as Mum-Ra in the process. And at the end of the fight, when Mum-Ra gets defeated and becomes extremely small, Thundercats make fun of him and laugh at his puny stature. When Mum-Ra flies away from there, the Thundercats tell each other that they could have easily grabbed that little guy before he flew away. And one of them just laughs it off by stating that he's just a mummy anyway. These moments clearly demonstrate that this parody version of the Thundercats is not meant to tell a serious story about battles of good versus evil, or a story about one's inner conflict, or a story about grit, survival, and resilience, the kind of storytelling we see in the other versions of the Thundercats. Instead, it's just meant to tell jokes. The storytelling in this parody is completely subservient to the jokes and punchline. The show ran for 52 episodes across one season. It ended in December 2020. Also, Larry Kenney, who voiced Lion-O in the original series, returned to voice Jaga in this parody. It was canceled after just one season, as it was heavily criticized by the fans of the original animated TV series. It has an IMDb rating of 2.2 out of 10 and a Rotten Tomatoes popcorn meter of only 20%. But despite these abysmal ratings, personally speaking, I do believe that many of the jokes in the parody do land. I mean, sometimes you can just ignore the ratings and have fun with silly, goofy jokes, right? How does the Dynamite Comics run reimagine Lion-O's first days on Third Earth? Dynamite Entertainment also released their own Thundercats comic series in 2024. It was written by Declan Shalvey with art by Drew Moss. The comic series mainly focused on the initial days after the arrival of the Thundercats on the planet of Third Earth. It's not concerned with how Thundercats escape the destruction of their home planet of Thundera. Instead, it's more concerned about how they move to another planet and adapt there for the purposes of survival. Although this comic series gives Lion-O the same origin story he got in the original series, it also deals with the consequences head on, with more ruthlessness and brutality. Here, Panthro is constantly casting doubts on whether Lion-O actually has the capability to lead the Thundercats or not. And not just that, over this issue, Panthro and Lion-O are constantly having bitter and hurtful conflicts and disagreements with each other. There's a moment in the first issue in which Lion-O is training under Panthro, and he's blindfolded and is supposed to anticipate incoming strikes from the surrounding floating discs. Although Lion-O is able to anticipate the floating discs, he fails at doing so against Panthro's own strikes. During their training, Panthro questions whether Lion-O is truly ready to be the Lord of the Thundercats and wield the Sword of Omens at this point. Lion-O calls him out for being way harsher than normal, and Panthro responds by stating that he's acting as his general instead of his mentor, unlike back on Thundera. He also tells him that the late Jaga might worry about the possibility of Lion-O biting off more than he could chew. The comic series by Dynamite Entertainment makes a lot of bold moves. In an extremely surprising and shocking moment, we even see the Sword of Omens getting shattered into pieces during a fight between Slithe and Lion-O at the end of the first issue. In this version, Lion-O has the title as well as the Sword of Omens. But unlike previous versions, those things alone are not enough for him to be accepted as the leader of the Thundercats. Even his team's confidence in him is not very resolute throughout the entirety of the comic series. We see Lion-O feeling extremely hurt and angry because of the fact that Jaga hid many things from him. It feels like betrayal to him, and he lashes out at his own team members. Jaga shows up and lashes back at Lion-O, telling him that he is not worthy of the Sword of Omens or the title of the Lord of the Thundercats. He even tells Lion-O's team members to take Lion-O into custody. A fight ensues between them. After that fight, Jaga dies in Lion-O's arms after apologizing to him for rushing to anger so quickly. This is certainly one of the most heartbreaking moments in the franchise of the Thundercats. In the same year, Dynamite Entertainment also released a spin-off comic series of Thundercats titled Thundercats Chitara. The spin-off series focuses on the life, culture, and civilization on the planet of Thundera before its destruction. It's the only entry in the entire franchise of the Thundercats that doesn't focus on the destruction of Thundera. Instead, it focuses on the life the Thundercats once had. It compels us to understand in depth why the planet of Thundera means so much to them, and why, despite all the obstacles thrown their way, they are hell-bent on rebuilding Thundera. When Thundercats was first released as an animated kids-friendly TV show back in 1985, it instantly became popular and won over its viewers, entertaining and fascinating children all over the world. As time went on, the franchise kept on expanding to new possibilities for the characters belonging to the universe of the Thundercats. It was adapted into several comic series by Marvel, Wildstorm, and Dynamite Entertainment. It got rebooted by Warner Brothers in 2011 and got its own parody for Cartoon Network. And the character of Lion-O kept on getting new interpretations. As of now, the Thundercats franchise has become extremely popular and profitable, and has remained that way for more than 40 years. Alright folks, it's time for us to sign off. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of all the origin stories of Lion-O across the history of the franchise of the Thundercats. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you ring that notification bell so that you get notified of all of our future videos. Thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon with our next video. Have a great day.